Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. I've been thinking about an alternative dessert for Christmas Day rather than the traditional Christmas pudding for those who may not like that rich Christmas pudding. And what I've come up with is what I'm calling a Black Forest Bakewell Tart. A Bakewell Tart is basically a pastry crust covered with raspberry jam, and then an almond frangipane filling goes into that, and it's baked, sometimes iced as well. So for the Black Forest one, I'm going to make a plain sweet crust pastry for the case. I'm going to use cherry pie filling instead of the raspberry jam, and I'm going to make a chocolate frangipane with the almonds, but using cocoa powder and chocolate chips as well. So that should taste similar, not the same, but similar to what we know as Black Forest Gâteau. And then that could be served with cream or custard or whatever you want, basically. So I'll go on to the ingredients, and I'll do the pastry first and then the filling. So for the pastry, I have 300 grams, which is 2 cups and 3.5 tablespoons of plain flour. I have 150 grams, which is 1 stick plus 2.5 tablespoons of cold butter. I have some water if I need it. I might need a tablespoon of water. I have the yolk from 3 medium eggs, that would be large in the USA, and I have 25 grams or 3 tablespoons of icing sugar. That's all we need for the pastry. And then for the filling, I have 1 can of, which is 400 grams, and that works out at 14 ounces of cherry pie filling. I have 3 large eggs, that would be extra large in the USA, and I've beaten those together. I have 100 grams, which is about 1 cup of ground almonds. I have 100 grams, which is 5/8 of a cup of plain flour. I have 50 grams, which is half a cup of cocoa powder. 50 grams, which is about 1/4 of a cup, I suppose, maybe slightly more, of chocolate chips. And I have 125 grams, which is 5/8 of a cup of caster sugar. And I also have, which I will soften later, 150 grams of unsalted butter. And I will have a pinch of salt to go in there as well. So the first thing to do is to make the pastry, and I'm going to do that in this immersion blender that has a larger bowl on. So I'm going to put the flour and the butter and the icing sugar into the bowl. And I'm going to pulse that until it forms a sort of breadcrumb-like texture. I think that's probably about right. And then I'm going to put in the egg yolks. And I'm going to pulse that again, or process that until it starts to clump. And if it's not clumping enough, I will add a tablespoon of water or thereabouts. And I think maybe I need a little bit of water. So I'll add about a tablespoon, and we just want this to begin to clump. I think that's good enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip that out onto the work surface, and I'm going to pull that into a dough. And that's quite good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap that in plastic wrap, and I'm going to chill it for 30 minutes. Then I'm going to roll it out, and I'm going to put it into a 23 centimetre flan tin that has a loose bottom. The loose bottom is not essential, but it does make things easier. And then we're going to blind bake that before we go on to do our filling. So I will come back in 30 minutes to roll this out, and while we're rolling it out, I will be preheating my oven to 190 Celsius. That's 170 Celsius with a fan, 375 Fahrenheit. I have the oven preheating, and I've taken the pastry out of the fridge. I've lightly floured the work surface, and I'm going to roll this out until it's large enough to fill the pan. Now the pastry is very short, so it might crack, but it doesn't matter because we can patch it very easily with this type of pastry. And I'll probably roll it out to about a quarter of an inch in thickness. So I'm going to try to roll that up. And just move it to one side while I get the tarts in. Whoops. And then you just press the pastry into the tin and use the bits that have come off to go up the sides to fill them. And where you have an overhang, you can leave that because the pastry tends sometimes to shrink a little during baking. And then I take a fork and I'll prick all over the base. Like that. And then I have some parchment paper here which I'm just going to push in, and I'm going to fill that parchment paper with baking beans. Now you could use these ceramic baking beans, or you could use beans or rice. But this is to stop it from rising and to cook it evenly. And with that, like that, I'm going to put that into the oven and bake it for 10 to 15 minutes until it's almost baked. Then I'm going to take it out and remove the beans and the parchment paper and put it back in the oven and bake it for a further 10 minutes until the pastry is completely cooked. Then I'm going to let it cool down, and I'll come back and show you the next step, which is to make the frangipane filling. The pastry tart case has now baked, and it's cooling down. It's almost cool. Now I'll just explain that after 10 minutes I took it, or 12 minutes in fact, I took it out of the oven and I used a sharp knife to cut off any excess pastry. I took the beans out and then I put it back in the oven for a further 10 minutes, and now it's cooling down. So we'll go on to make the frangipane filling, the chocolate frangipane filling. And so for that I'm going to put in my butter into a bowl, and I've added 1/4 teaspoon of salt into my flour. I should mention that. And I'm going to add the sugar, and then I'm going to mix that with my hand mixer just to get it mixed and fluffy, and then I'll add the eggs. So that's mixed, and I'm going to add the eggs a little bit at a time and mix them up. If it curdles, it doesn't matter, because when the flour goes in it will all come together again. Okay, so that's mixed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the almonds, the flour and the cocoa powder into one bowl, and I'm just going to give those a bit of a stir around to get them combined. Now you could sieve these if you wanted to, but I'm not going to. I think for a frangipane it's not necessary. And then I'm going to add those into the egg, sugar and butter mixture. And I'm going to mix those around on slow speed. And that's mixed enough. So I'm just going to use my spatula to get to the bottom and incorporate any mixture that hasn't been incorporated already. And then I'm going to take my 50 grams of chocolate chips and I'm going to mix those in as well. And then with that mixed in, I can set that aside for a moment. And take the pastry case and then the pie filling. And I'm going to spoon the pie filling onto the bottom. Like that. And then I'm going to take our mixture and I'm going to put it on the top, but don't want to disturb too much of the pie filling, so I'll do it like this. And then spread it around. And with that spread, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some flaked almonds, just a tablespoon or two, or shaved almonds I think some people call them, and I'm just going to drop them on the top. And then that is ready to go into the oven to bake for 35 to 40 minutes until it's risen and cooked through, and it feels quite firm to the touch on top. Then you can take it out and let it cool down in the tin before removing it. So I'll come back and show you once it's baked and I've taken it out of the tin. The Black Forest Bakewell is out of the oven, and I've allowed it to cool down, and I've taken it out of the tart tin, and this is what it looks like. It would have been fuller, but I used some of the mixture to make a smaller one so that I could taste a small one rather than cut into the big one, which I'm going to take somewhere else later. So let's have a taste of it. Does taste very, very good. That pastry is nice and light and very short, very crumbly. You have the chocolate frangipane and then that rich cherry pie flavour as well. It's excellent. This is ideal with ice cream or cream, or even custard, I would think, or maybe chocolate custard or chocolate sauce. But it's very good indeed, and it's a good alternative if after a big Christmas dinner you can't manage Christmas pudding, which is a very heavy, rich fruit pudding. So this would be a nice alternative as a dessert. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, which will take you to this recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.